Hello everybody and welcome to my mid-year book tag. Today we are going to be discussing the books that I have read over the course of the first 6 months, and I have had such a fun time reading this year. And we are going to get started with our first question as well as some statistics for my reading year so far. So at first, I do want to say that my reading year so far, these past 6 months, have been absolutely fantastic. I've read some incredible books, and I have disliked a very few. And I say this because my statistics, when I put up the numbers of like what I read, like star-wise, and I was very surprised, but also like very excited the fact that I had this many good books so far this year. And so we're going to start with the fact that I read a total of 41 books so far in the first 6 months. And 14 of them were 5 stars. I don't know if it's a good or a bad thing that I rated so many 5 stars, but I did it anyway. Like I said, my reading year was fantastic. So in the first 6 months, I have had 14 5-star reads. I have had 13 4-star reads. I have had 9 3-star reads. I have had 2 2-star reads, and I have had 3 unrated books. Now those unrated books were just for the sake of, I do have 3 books that I did not rate, and that's because one was Beyond the Wand by Tom Felton, and I don't rate memoirs. The second one was Don't Believe Everything You Think, which is a self-help book. And the third one was actually And Then There Were None by Agatha Christie. It is such a classic that part of me felt weird rating it, so I did not. Now, I absolutely loved the book. I did. I really, really did. But there was just something about it that I could not put a rating on it. Everything else was rated. I read books kind of like in all formats. I read physical books, ebooks on my Kindle, and as well as listen to audiobooks. So of the 41, 16 of them were physical books, hardback or paperback. I read 11 ebooks, and I listened to 14 audiobooks. I was actually, in all honesty, I was not expecting the numbers to like even out like that, but I was very happy that it's kind of, I have a eclectic of types of books. So that was very fun for me too. When I did the numbers, I'm like, it's like I had to double check all my numbers. I'm like, are you sure? It was really good. Like I said, my reading year has gone absolutely fantastic. I've loved like 90% of the books that I've read. Next question. What is the best book that you've read so far in 2024? In all honesty, I have a tie. Going through all my books, I have 2 favorite books so far this year. And they are Butcher and Blackbird and The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue. 2 very different books, I know. But I absolutely loved these. The Butcher and Blackbird, there's just something about the fact that it's like, not only is it romance, but it's romance of serial killers. There was just something about I don't know if it was just the premise of the book, the way that Brynne Weaver wrote the book, but like I could not put this down, and I can't tell you how excited I am to eventually get my hands on Leather and Lark. I'm very excited for the sequel. I have not read it yet. But I absolutely ate this up, and I absolutely loved it so much. And so then, well, I mean, of course I loved it. It's one of my favorite books, but okay. So, and then we have The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue. I loved the take on life, the way that it set up the years, the 300 years of this story, and the way that our main character goes through life and deals with life. And it's like it stuck with me. This book really stuck with me after reading it. And I honestly think that The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue was the first book in what started me increasing my reading of literary fiction. This is historical fiction, I believe. Like, it's like historical / literary. But there was just something about it that I like, thinking back on these past 6 months, I really think that this was the catalyst for my interest and my growing interest in literary fiction. The next question is, what is the best sequel you have read so far this year? And my favorite sequel would have to be A Court of Mist and Fury from the ACOTAR series. It is the second book. I so far have only read the 2 other books. I own the entire series, but I've only read the first 2 books. And of everything that I've read so far this year, this is my favorite sequel. I think it might be my only sequel I've read this year, if I think about it. I don't remember. Anyway, I absolutely loved it. Yes, Court of Thorns and Roses was stellar. Mwah. It was, I believe, the first Court of Thorns and Roses I rated 4-star, but A Court of Mist and Fury, like, was fantastic. I couldn't get over it. I absolutely loved it, and it's like, I feel like it's now the catalyst for like the rest of the series for me. It's like, it's just going to be fantastic, and I cannot wait to read it, the rest of it. The next question is, what is a new release you haven't read yet but want to? And that would have to be 5 Broken Blades by Mia Corlin. I have not read 5 Broken Blades yet. I'm very excited for it though. I got 5 Broken Blades as my May book of the month book, and I just love, first of all, I love the way it looks, and just the fact that we have liars, like, it's all about lying, yeah, and they can agree on murder, and it's like, it almost becomes like these big games between these 5 individuals. And there's just something about it that it's just, I'm so excited to pick this up. I just haven't gotten the opportunity to pick it up yet. And it has my interest. It has my interest, and I'm so excited to when I can finally pick this up. What is your most anticipated release for the second half of the year? My most anticipated release is Reckless by Lauren Roberts, and it's, from the time that I'm filming this, it comes out, it's releasing tomorrow, if I remember correctly. But I don't have it pre-ordered. I don't think I'm going to be getting my hands on it like right away, but it is a book that I do want to get by the end of the year. I'm very intrigued by the book, and I'm very excited because I just recently finished Powerful, and it was one that it's like, it took me so long to get my hands on it that I almost didn't either. And so after I got it and then read it, I'm like, oh my gosh, it was stellar. And so I'm very excited for the sequel. But I'm not like getting it. It's not pre-ordered or anything, but it is one that I eventually want to get and hopefully read by the end of the year. The next question is, what is the worst book you have read so far this year? In all honesty, I kind of had 2 in a way. I don't like the way the word is phrased, like the worst book, because they're not bad books. None of the books, I don't think there's really even such thing as like, what's the worst book, you know? Because people have different tastes, you know? So it's, rather than saying, oh, what's the worst book I've read, it's like the books that I have not enjoyed as much as the rest. Because I know that, I mean, there are people who do enjoy these books that I'm about to mention, but personally, I didn't like them. And so there are actually 2 because I have 2 because I did have a DNF in the first 6 months. And so I put it on this list just because I didn't like it, and so I DNF'd. And so the one I DNF'd was, and I've only had 1 DNF so far this year, and that DNF, everyone in this room will someday be dead. So I DNF'd it. There was such, I know that she's obsessed with death, and I feel like it was done weirdly. I think, in all honesty, I only got 30% before I DNF'd. There was just something about it that just, I wasn't having it. And so, and then a book that I finished that I didn't care for was The Maid by Nina Prose. It was all right. The Maid follows a maid of a hotel who discovers a death. And what's interesting about the story is that it's from the maid's perspective, and the maid has autism. So it's a very interesting viewpoint, and I absolutely loved that. Like, the portrayal of autism throughout the book was very good, but the whole book as a unit did not particularly keep my interest. I didn't quite care for it, and that's okay. So the next question is, what is the biggest disappointment of the year so far? For me, I call this a disappointment because I've heard great things about this author, and I wanted to love the book. I did finish the book and I wanted to love the book, but I did not, and that is The It Girl by Ruth Ware. I could like her other stuff. I have not read any more Ruth Ware. It's the only book that I've read by Ruth Ware. I know one of the YouTubers that I watch is fond of her writing, and so I figured I'd give her a go. I did not particularly like The It Girl. It was one of my 2 stars. I think it was the 2. I only had 2 stars. My 2 stars of the year were The Maid and The It Girl. And so I just didn't like this one as much. I don't know what about it made me not like it. I don't remember anymore. But I just know that it wasn't, I got bored. Like, honestly, my 2 stars were rated 2 stars because I finished them, but I was bored. And I'm kind of scared to rate anything 1 star. I have not figured that out yet. Because, honestly, because also it's like I want to read books that I know I'm going to enjoy. And so I had a few this year so far that I haven't really cared for. And that's okay. It's all part of the process. I mean, I'm going to have books that I like. I'm going to have books that I don't like. The next question is, what is the biggest surprise so far this year? For me, my biggest surprise was Better Than the Movies by Lynn Painter. And I did annotate this one. I think what made this one a surprise for me was, well, first off, I did rate it 5 stars. I feel like, for me, I think there's something about just like the simple romances that I feel like that there needs to be a little more for me to fully enjoy just a simple romance. But that, and it was high schoolers, it's young adult. And so I wasn't totally part of me was going into this one that, because I've seen a lot of Lynn Painter's books, I was curious, and it sounded adorable. So I gave it a go. I didn't have high expectations for it, but that was just me. I didn't say that I didn't have a reason to go into it without any expectations. I was just kind of, it's like, you know what? Let's see what this is. So this turned out to be a really big surprise for me. I loved it. I was giggling. I was laughing. I was absolutely loving Wes. And the fact that it took there was just something about their dynamic that I absolutely loved. Loved their dynamic. So this was a fun read, and I'm very excited. The sequel, nothing like the movies, comes out in October, and so I'm very excited for that one as well. I would like to read the sequel when it does come out. The next question is, who is your favorite new author? And this could be either a new author or a new to you author. And so for me, my favorite is a new to me for me, it is a favorite new to me author, because I know that this author has been writing for years, and I'm slowly starting to find her books, and so that would be Kristen Hanna. Kristen Hanna has become a new favorite author for me, and it's because I've never really found too much interest in historical fictions, but there's just something about the way that Kristen Hanna writes that I absolutely love. I have read The Four Winds by her. I've read The Woman. I read The Four Winds back earlier this year, and then I read The Woman when it came out. I got it on audiobook with one of my credits. Audiobook on Audible with one of my credits, and I absolutely loved it. And I recently picked up The Nightingale, and of course I know that Nightingale is like one of those books, if you read anything, you have to read The Nightingale. So I found it and I got it. But she has been one of those authors that it's like I always just like pick up on her stuff, you know? I always find her around, and I'm very excited to find more of her work and read more of her work, because I love her writing. I just love it, and she helps me I've become very engrossed in her stories. It's like I get sucked into that time, you know? Like with The Four Winds, I got sucked into what's it called? It's something bowl sand. There was a lot of sandstorms. I'll put a comment here because it is not coming to me. And then with The Women, just that time of the Vietnam War, I felt sucked into it. And so I cannot wait to be sucked into the Nightingale and any future work that I pick up of hers. Who is your new fictional crush? I was trying to think about it because like I've read so many different things this year that honestly, of all of the crushes that I've come across, of all of the people to crush on, whether real, fantasy, human, not human, the one that has like stuck with me has been Rysand. Rysand from A Court of Mist and Fury. Watching him from A Court of Thorns and Roses to A Court of Mist and Fury, I'm just like, I'm sitting here like, oh my gosh. I was thoroughly enjoying reading all about Rysand. Anything with Rysand. Thank you. There's just, his attitude, the way that he speaks, the way that he goes about things. It's like he's very, I can't think of a word for it now. Like he goes after what he wants. I feel like he's a very smart and cunning individual, and he goes after what he wants. And there's, like I said, the way that he goes about it, it's one of those that it's like, you'll only kind of take that kind of man as a fantasy man. You know, if that makes sense. There's just something, it's like, have you ever seen the shorts where it's like things that you'll take from fictional men that you won't take from real men? Kind of thing. That's acceptable from fantasy men, not from real men. Rysand, for me. My newest favorite, like the next question on here is the newest favorite character. I realized I did not prep this answer coming into the video. If I'm being honest, I didn't prep this one. Oh no, I thought about it. Now that I think about it, looking on my bookcase, I thought about it, but I didn't type it on my list here. But my favorite character, all honestly, like all three of these guys from Bookshops and Bone Dust. I enjoyed the character lineup from Bookshops and Bone Dust. In Bookshops and Bone Dust, we have Viv the Orc, Fern the, there's a name for her, type, Ratskin. I think they call her a Ratskin. I think that's what she's called. And this little guy down here, his name is Pot Roast. He is half dog, half eagle, half bird thing. But he's a dog. Bird thing, but he's the pet. And I absolutely loved these characters. They were so adorable, and I'm excited. I know that Fern and Pot Roast aren't going to be in it, but I do still have Legends and Lattes to read. I have not read this one yet, but I absolutely enjoyed these characters, and they were some of my favorites so far this year. What book has made you cry so far this year? Now, amazingly, the book that made me cry was Things We Never Got Over by Lucy Score. I read this a few weeks ago. Guys, I loved it. I absolutely loved it. And there was just something about the relationship between Naomi and Knox that, like, especially like later on in the book, and just the way that Knox treats Naomi and looks after Naomi and Waylay, my heart. Knox is a jerk, but he made me cry in the way that he takes care of Naomi and Waylay, and it made me cry, and I loved it. And then, because that was the first book that made me cry, and then actually, after I put together this list, I was in the middle of reading Powerful, and Powerful did actually make me cry as well towards the end. Because, of course, we follow Adina in Powerful, who is a side character in Powerless. And so, now if you read Powerless, you know what happens to Adina. And so, of course, going into this book, you know what's going to happen, but you still cry all the same. So, those made me cry, and I was very happy. I loved the books. Like, me crying, it was nothing bad about the book that made me cry. It was the sweetness and Things You Never Got Over, and just the wholesomeness of Adina and Makoto and Powerful. So next, what book made you happy so far this year? And that would have to be Half a Soul by Olivia Atwater. This is a comfy, cozy, historical romance read that it's one of those like Bookshops and Bone Dust where it's low stakes. And I loved the romance, the way that the two of them just fit perfectly together, if that makes sense. And the friendships along the way were just very wholesome, very, very wholesome. And I appreciate Elias for saying things, even if it's hard to, even if it's those hard things to talk about. Like, he does it so bluntly that it's like you kind of have to just respect him for that, you know? But yeah, my favorites, oh well, of course you've got our main relationship of Dora and Elias, but then you also have the side character Albert, who is a longtime friend of Elias, and just the friendship dynamic between the three of them was stellar, and I appreciated that. And I'm so glad to have finally finished it, because it took me 2 tries to get through this book. But when I finally finished it, I was thrilled. I was so happy. It made me happy. What is the most beautiful book you've bought this year? Amazingly enough, it is not one of my physical books, it is one of my Kindle books, and that is Murder Your Employer by Rupert Holmes. Now, I love seeing the color of this book, the colors, the gold, the intricacies, the framing. I love it. Now on my Kindle, of course, if I'm reading it on my Kindle, the cover is black and white, but when I look at this thing in color, it's like, it's so pretty. I love it. There's something about the intricacies and the gold and the lining and the flowers. It's very regal, it's very royal, and I love it. What are the books you need to read by the end of the year? For me, one of my reading goals is to finish the ACOTAR series. My goal is to finish these other 3 books by the end of the calendar year. That is my goal. And then, if I'm lucky, get a little more into Throne of Glass. I've only read Assassin's Blade, but my goal is to finish ACOTAR and then see how far I can get into Throne of Glass. I feel like there was something else that because I did want to mention, I didn't do while we were talking about the numbers, because so far, like I said, I've read 41 books, but I realized, because going into this year, this is the first year that I've actually set a goal to read so many books in the year. Last year in 2023, I read 33 books. Now, like I said, I've already passed that 6 months in, and my initial goal was to read, because I didn't want to like push myself so hard. I wasn't sure how much I could get read in a calendar year, so I set my goal up for 50. Like in 2024, I wanted to read 50 books. And I'm already at 41, 6 months in. So that makes me like really happy and really excited to see how many more I can read for the rest of the year. And just now it's like, I know I'll get to 50, but it's like, I'm curious, like, how many over 50 am I gonna get? Like, am I gonna have to like change my goal for 2025, you know? We'll see. But I wanted to make sure that I gave myself enough time and leniency into my goals for this year, my reading goals, just because of the fact that I've really been starting to get into it over the last year and a half. And so it's been a really fun reading year. I'm very happy with my reading year so far for these first 6 months, and I'm very excited to see what the rest of the year, how my reading for the rest of the year looks. And so I want to thank you guys so much for watching, and I hope that you enjoyed my mid-year book review, and I will see you guys in the next video. Bye.